So I've been dating my girlfriend for about 2.5 years. She's a small blonde with a positive attitude about everything. We both go to college, so we only get to see each other so much. Her college is in New Hampshire and mine is in Massachusetts. Since she doesn't have a car, I would drive up in my little old car that I got from my grandmother. I'm not a huge fan of the car, but I got it basically free, so I can't complain. I never had an issue making this hour-and-a-half drive, but a few weeks ago, I got more than my fill. I was visiting my girlfriend, and it was already becoming a rough day. We wanted the dorm room to ourselves, but her annoying roommate wouldn't leave, so we hung out in the common room. After spending most of the day together, we finally called it time for me to head back to my own college. I said goodbye, and I would text her when I got back. It was 6 o'clock anyway, and it was getting pretty dark outside given that it was winter. I normally take the New Hampshire back roads for a more scenic route and avoid traffic. It doesn't affect the time of travel either, so that's a plus. Most people who live in and visit New Hampshire know that most of the back roads are not lit well with streetlights, or not even lit at all. This isn't much of a problem because I can just put on my high beams. After about 30 minutes of driving, I turned down a road that looks as if it was just a wide path. The GPS said I would be going straight for about 7 miles, and due to knowing the way New Hampshire roads can be, I didn't think anything of it. The street was like how I mentioned before, and was narrow enough for a car and a half, was surrounded by the woods, and was not lit by streetlights at all. I got about 3 or 4 miles in, and saw a guy on my high beam standing in the middle of the road. He was waving at my car asking for help. The road wasn't big enough for me to pass around him, so I had to stop. The man then came around to my driver's side window and gestured for me to put it down. I wasn't fully thinking straight, so I put my window down about halfway. He looked like an average 40 to 40-year-old man, but he gave off a disturbing presence. He told me he was having car trouble and asked me to get out of my car to help him. Now, I'm a 19-year-old and have an average build and brown surfer-style hair. None of my physical qualities hint at me knowing anything about cars. I then told him that I knew nothing about cars, and that if he really wanted help, I could call him a mechanic or a tow truck. He kept gesturing towards his black rusted pickup truck, and insisted that I got out to help him. This started to give me the chills, and I didn't know what to do. That was when I noticed there was someone crouching behind the truck. The man couldn't tell, but I began to internally panic. My fight or flight senses kicked into gear, and I chose to do something risky. I then told the guy that I would pull over to the side of the road up ahead and get out to see what I can help him with. This seemed to work, and the guy began to smile. He backed up off my car, and I stepped as hard as I could on the gas pedal. I sped off and looked in my rear view to see both men run out into the middle of the road and just stand there. I kept driving as fast as I could until I got off the road into a nearby gas station, where I stopped to call the police. I told the dispatch my experience, and asked them if I needed to stick around for questioning. They told me they would send some officers out to check the street, and I was fine to continue on driving. I then called my girlfriend and told her what happened. She was just happy I was safe. I have no idea what those guys' intentions were. I don't know if they were actually having car trouble, or if I was going to get carjacked, or worse. Needless to say, after that night, I would not be driving the back roads alone at night anymore. Also, to the men who are having car troubles, let's not meet again. I always tell this as a heartbreaking tale that has actually happened to me, especially in light of all the terrifying, heartbreaking news stories of girls who get into Ubers and are never seen again. This happened when I was in college. It's one of the bigger party schools, with an entire street of bars that you can wander to and from. My boyfriend, now fiance, had gone back to his hometown for the weekend, so I decided to go out with some friends. I'm sure you can see where this is going. I had a bit too much to drink, and was on the edge of a blackout. Knowing with my whole mind, body, and soul that I did not want to become a liability for my friends for the rest of the night, I told them I was going to Uber home. My friends insisted on coming home with me, but selfishly, I wanted to call my boyfriend when I got home and have a bed to myself, so I told them all no, but took a screenshot of my driver's name and info on the app and sent it to him. When he got close, I hugged them all and walked out the door. Like I said earlier, it's a big party school with a lot of bars in one area. So the entire strip was lined with Ubers from about 11 p.m. to 3. It was almost bar closed, so there was a ton. And look, I was hammered. I don't even know what a Toyota Yaris looks like in the best of times. So as I was searching, a man rolled down his window and asked if I was waiting for an Uber. I said yes. He told me he wasn't my Uber, but if I canceled my ride and accepted his, then he would take me home. I was already thinking of the leftovers I had in the fridge at this point, so I agreed, canceled my Uber, and linked my account up with his. He was super nice, and he was an Uber. I've heard stories of fake Uber drivers, so I did make sure he was legit. He called me beautiful a few times right off the bat, but hey, I was a girl in college. I get that a lot. I remember we talked about our favorite books. I told him I was an English major, and he was super interested in listening to me talk about tutoring ESL students in my free time on campus. He was an immigrant who had learned to speak English, so he lamented about how awful it was to learn such an intricate language, but how rewarding successes were in the end. When he missed the turn into my apartment complex, I figured it just must be because he was distracted by our conversation. I politely pointed out how he missed the turn in, and he said he turned back around. Rather than making a U-turn though, he took the longest way to get back to my apartment. I was still in familiar territory, so I at least knew that he was going in the right direction. But I was starting to get nervous. It was around 2:30 at this time, and it was super dark and no one was awake, let alone outside. When he missed the turn in again, I asked if I could just get out and make it on my own. He seemed kinda offended, like he was surprised that I wasn't as engrossed in our conversation as he was. I kinda jokingly told him that I was a broke college student, and he was racking up my bill during the surge. That seemed to straighten things out a bit. He was like, "Oh, I completely understand," and turned back towards my complex. I was honestly so freaked out and drunk at that point that as soon as he pulled into my complex, I was like, "Okay, right here is fine, thank you," and pulled on the door handle when he came to a stop. It didn't open. I hit the little lock latch. Still nothing. "Let's go get coffee," he said. He clicked the button in the app that says the trip was completed and clicked out of the app. At this point, I'm just trying not to look as freaked out as I feel. I told him I was tired and it was late, and coffee was the last thing I needed at the moment. I tried the door again just to make sure I wasn't drunk and handling the door wrong. Still didn't open. "We should just sit here and talk till you're feeling better," he was explaining to me. "We can go somewhere more private too if you like. Do you live alone up here?" At this point, I'm just frantically digging through my purse for my phone. Screw being polite. When he asked what I was doing, I told him I promised my boyfriend I'd call him once I was home safely. Wrong thing to say. He got pissed that I had a boyfriend and didn't tell him about it. He asked what his name was, what he did for a living, and where he was right now at this very second. When I gave half-hearted answers, he got even angrier. He demanded to know why a boyfriend of mine would be stupid enough to leave his girl alone with another man. He repeated it twice. At this point, I'm just trying not to cry. When I figured my phone must have fallen under the seat, I started digging around down there. He demanded to know what I was doing. I gave my best impression of a genuine laugh and said I dropped my phone. He told me to stop digging around in his things immediately. I stopped. Mind you, I'm drunk at this point. I was just trying to keep myself together or not vomit or pass out. I tried the door a third time. Still nothing. He asked if I wanted to get coffee again. Even kind of begged a little. I told him no, I just needed sleep. He asked if I lived alone again. I lied and I told him I had a roommate. He asked if it was my boyfriend, and I said no. He kind of got angry again, and then straight up asked if I made my boyfriend up. I told him no, and he got angrier, and again asked why he would leave me alone with another man like this. I'm usually pretty good at reading people, and I got the vibe that this guy thought he was a knight compared to my boyfriend. So I lied. Through my teeth. I told him I was going to break things off with my boyfriend, that we weren't really that serious, and that he was an idiot to leave me alone like this. Thank whatever God that was watching over me, but that did it. He calmed down and said that changed things. He asked if I wanted to get coffee again, and then I changed my answer to, not tonight. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him. He called to make sure it was my real number. My phone buzzed from between my seat and the door, and I fished it out. He grabbed my phone from me and demanded that I show my boyfriend's contact info. When I did, he deleted it and gave me a big smile. "Feels good, doesn't it?" I told him yes. He put his number in my phone and gave it back. I told him good night in the hopes that he would release me, and he told me he'd like to talk for just a little bit longer. I had to stay locked in that car with him until 4:30 in the morning. I don't even remember what we talked about. He asked if he can hold my hand at one point, to which I said I needed to break up with my boyfriend before I did something like that with another man. He liked that answer, thankfully. When he finally let me out, the door was child locked so it could only be opened from the outside. The windows were locked too. I walked up the wrong building steps and crouched down in the shadow of some person's door until he drove off. I sat for another 10 minutes and then sprinted to my apartment. After crying on the floor of my kitchen for a while, I called my boyfriend and explained to him what happened. His response was the one I get from everyone when I tell the story. "Report that dude to Uber." But even though he didn't know which building of my complex I lived in, he still knew where I lived. I was terrified of seeing him again. I was terrified of calling the Uber. To this day, I refuse to Uber alone, and I make sure I have my phone in my hand every time I get into an Uber now. I realized it could have been a lot worse, and maybe he was the good guy in the wrong line of thinking. And he did mean well, but I was terrified that I wasn't going to make it to my apartment that night. Please be cautious when getting an Uber. Don't be like me. So, Uber driver from hell? I know we technically met before, but I'm going to have to take a rain check on that coffee date. Forever. Let's not meet. Edit. For my boyfriend's number being deleted, he deleted the contact, but I still had text messages from him and group chats with him in it, so his number was still there, just not the name assigned to it. I just went back into my text and added his name again. As for reporting it, this is when I shamefully admit that I am not brave. I really did fear that if he got into trouble he could easily link it back to me, and that he knew where I lived at the time. This apartment was the best I could find with how much I could afford for rent, and it was selfish and cowardly to keep it from authorities. I admit it. I'm hoping a braver person reported him if he ever acted like that again. This happened to me in 2016, so I'm not sure if reporting it now would do much. But if anyone thinks so, please let me know, and I will share my story and evidence with the local police.